Welcome, Hatters, to Homecoming 2021. My name is Sam Friedman, and I'm the director of Hillel here at Stetson University. And this year, the Office of Religious and Spiritual Life brings you Homecoming Chapel from right here in the Jeffrey and Diane Ginsburg Hillel House, the home for Jewish life on campus. Homecoming, as an institution, is the chain that connects our earliest graduates with our future graduates. At Homecoming, music majors reconnect with business majors, athletes celebrate with academics, and everyone shares in our identity as Stetson Hatters. At Stetson, our motto is Pro Deo et Veritate, for God and truth, and the connections that we build with each other here at Homecoming and during your time as a student is the living version of that motto. At Stetson, we know community is sacred and community is active. Community, we know, is not a spectator sport. So welcome home, Hatters. Welcome back to our sacred community. And thank you for joining us as we celebrate the 2021 Homecoming here at Stetson University.
I invite you to close your eyes, bow your heads, or otherwise look into your hearts as I offer this invocation in recognition of the many paths traveled by the members of this beloved community. Source of infinite light and life, the oneness we call by many names. We come together to celebrate and affirm our commitment to one another and to this wonderful and treasured institution. We are thankful for the most generous love that supports and nurtures us. We're especially grateful for all our teachers, those we studied with here, and those who offered us the lessons, both spiritual and secular, that help us define our lives. May we honor the truths we have realized thanks to their compassion and their guidance by bringing to our homecoming an openness of heart and mind so that we can continue to address the great challenges facing our world. May we be aware of the many gifts offered us by each precious moment. Thus may our efforts continue to bring light to this community, to our world, and into our hearts. May it be so.
Hello, I'm Judy Russell, Stetson class of 1962. I was asked to give some scriptures that relate to light in a dark world. I'm going to start with John 1. In the beginning, the Word already existed. He was with God, and he was God. He was in the beginning with God. He created everything there is. Nothing exists that he didn't make. Life itself was in him, and this life gives light to everyone. The light shines through the darkness. The darkness can never extinguish it. God sent John the Baptist to tell everyone about the light so that everyone might believe because of his testimony. John himself was not the light. He was only a witness to the light. The one who is the true light, who gives light to everyone, was going to come into the world. But although the world was made through him, the world didn't recognize him when he came. Even in his own land and among his own people, he was not accepted. But to all who believed him and accepted him, he gave the right to become children of God. They are reborn. This is not a physical birth resulting from human passion or plan. The rebirth comes from God. So the Word became human and lived here on earth among us. He was full of unfailing love and faithfulness, and we have seen his glory, the glory of the only Son of the Father. Now I'm going to John 8:12. Jesus said to the people, I am the light of the world. If you follow me, you won't be stumbling through the darkness, because you'll have the light that leads to life. And in Ephesians 5, verse 8, for though your hearts were once full of darkness, now you are full of light from the Lord, and your behavior should show it. For this light within you produces only what is good and right and true. Try to find out what is pleasing to the Lord. Take no part in the worthless deeds of evil and darkness. Instead, rebuke and expose them. It is shameful even to talk about the things that ungodly people do in secret. But when the light shines on them, it becomes clear how evil these things are. And where your light shines, it will expose their evil deeds. This is why it's said, awake, O sleeper, rise up from the dead, and Christ will give you light. May God bless this in your hearts. Thank you.
Happy homecoming, my fellow Hatters. My name is Reverend Jennifer Carpenter, class of 2008. I am grateful to virtually be with each of you and pray it brings grace and peace to you wherever you may be. Our texts for today come from Matthew chapter 5 and John chapter 1. Matthew chapter 5, 14 through 16. You are the light of the world. A city on top of a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a basket. Instead, they put it on top of a lampstand, and it shines on all who are in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before all people so they can see the good things you do and praise your God who is in heaven. John chapter 1. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness does not extinguish the light. The word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. Homecoming makes us all reflect on our time spent in these hallowed halls of Stetson, and when I was asked to do this homily, I was no different. I started thinking about my studies, about my growth, about my friends. So many memories, some silly ones, including, bringing an air mattress out to the quad to be more comfortable while we studied for finals, or when I got thrown into the fountain on my birthday, which is in December, but it's Florida cold, so it's fine. Or about how we were walking back to our dorms late one night and, against my better adult judgment, decided to play in the reclaimed water of the sprinkler system as we danced our way back. I also thought about the deep and special moments, such as the way brand new friends helped me pack up and load my car as I drove home to miss the rains from Hurricane Francis, or the ways that we skipped class as the tornadoes came through DeLand and helped our neighbors and our friends clean up as best as we could. I thought about how those friends helped me through my deepest pains and helped me heal, and about how the ways they were lights to me as we were lights to one another, going through our painful and beautiful healing processes while also trying to earn a traditional degree at Stetson. My time at Stetson was rich, and just like many of you, I had a moment of realization as I prepared to graduate that Stetson would never be the same as I knew it then. The people I knew, the places I knew, even my favorite Boston coffee drink, they were all going to change. And so was I. The only thing that stays the same is everything changes, right? Change is inevitable, and yet we all struggle so much with it. We've all been through so many changes since our time at Stetson, and especially over these last 2 years. And I'm convinced more than ever that what's inside of a person comes outside of a person as they're squeezed with change. What has come out of you these past 2 years? Has it been light or darkness? Have you found yourself more angry, unforgiving? Have you been more complacent in your day-to-day? Have you despaired? Have you become isolated or hopeless? Have you lived in the gray, somewhere in between? Or have you become more kind, more loving, grown closer to God? Have you taken steps toward healing for yourself and others? Have you given sacrificially in this time? We've all experienced a global, national, and I'm betting probably personal trauma over the past 2 years. And many of us have responded to that trauma in funny versions of fighting, fleeing, freezing, or fawning, as things have drastically changed all around us. And just like when we walked across that graduation stage at Stetson, though a much more joyous reason, we know now that things will never be the same. And unless you've built your own TARDIS or time machine, you cannot go back in space or time. There is no true return to the way things were. So why do we hang so desperately on to the shadows of the past or the shades of the future? As Christians, we're taught almost explicitly to be good at living in the past or living in the future, but not so good at the present. We study scriptures from the first century and talk about living the way that Jesus did, which for all my Floridians was before air conditioning in the desert. So let's consider that. We study the scriptures and talk about the hope of the reign of God and being made new in heaven. But what we terribly miss is how not to be masters at escapism. We were not given these examples from the past and hope for the future to ignore the messy and wonderful application of Jesus' teaching of walking in the light right in front of us today, however difficult that may be. And sometimes it seems too dark to want to stay here. We want to turn on lights from the past or turn on a light from the future, but we're meant to be healing light right here in the present. So when the squeezing of change brings something out of us that makes us cringe or brings pain to ourselves or others, we may want to fight, to flee, to fawn, to freeze. But the light is there to bring life. The light that was in the beginning is there to bring light to us here in the present moment. And it is to be a light that brings life. And just like I saw that light in my community here at Stetson, and then for myself for the first time realized I could be that light, we are to be that life-giving light to each other. So no matter what your past memories of these halls of Stetson may be, may they all be touched by the light, and may you experience the illumination of God's life-giving love to show you the way forward. May that light inspire us all to see one another's good light and give praises to God for the truth that light has come in this darkness, and the darkness will never be able to extinguish the light.
I'm sure many of you know that the oldest tradition here at Stetson is the annual Yule log lighting. Last year, because of the shutdowns and all of that, students went home before the traditional Yule log Tuesday. And when the Office of Religious and Spiritual Life realized this, well, let's just say there was absolutely no way that the alumni of the future were going to look back on my time here and say that I was the chaplain that let the fire go out. But we couldn't organize an event like we usually do, so we got creative. Sam, whom you heard from earlier, suggested that since students would be gone and community members couldn't come to events here, we could do it as a social media event. It was different, but it worked. As usual, we brought in the piece of the log that we had saved from last year and used it to start this year's fire, just as we have every year since J. Ollie Edmonds lit the first Yule log in 1948. That particular event seems to encapsulate the experience of the past 20 months or so. And it always reminds me of a story that one of my mentors told me once. He had visited relatives, and there was a young nephew there. And the boy started talking about how he wasn't afraid of the dark anymore. Apparently, he had noticed that when the lights were off in his bedroom, that his eyes adjusted and he could see. And he said, you know, there's a lot of light in the dark. This era is certainly an interesting one, and yes, it has its dark moments. But you know, there's a lot of light in the dark. Much of the light that's available here now at Stetson is the result of your presence from the past. Many of you have contributed financially, of course, and thank you very much for that. But I mean your presence here as students, as alumni, as members of the community. I happened across an interesting essay recently about a French philosopher, Gaston Bachelard, and his thought on things like what makes a space a sacred space, and what makes a house a home. And he felt that one might see the home as a tool for analysis of the human soul. I like that. Home as a tool for the analysis of the human soul. A home, he said, is what happens when we truly inhabit a space, not by just being in it, but by giving a part of ourselves to it and willingly receiving what it has to give us. When we see Stetson this way, as a home that reflects the souls that have inhabited it, this is really a wonderful place. This philosopher said something else that rings especially true right now. He said, a home that has been experienced in this way is not an inert box. It transcends geometrical space. Your past experience of this place has created a home full of light, a place of happiness, of wisdom, of goodwill. And the light that you've carried from this space out into the world has spread far beyond the boundaries of brick walls and boulevards. With your presence here and your love for this institution, you continue to shine light on the paths now trodden by this generation of students, who in turn will help illuminate the worlds of generations to come. So yes, sometimes we've had to get a little creative with our traditions. Sometimes we've had to look a little deeper into the darkness to find the light within it. And sometimes we find that our home is not a place in space or time. We can come to the present moment wherever and whenever that present moment may happen. I'd like to close with this benediction. We surround all beings with the warmth of love and compassion. Particularly, we send loving thoughts to those in suffering and sorrow, to those in doubt and ignorance, and to all who are striving to attain spiritual truth. We pray for all those who were unable to join us today and for those grieving, for lost loved ones. To those suffering from illness, those grieving, and those ministering to the sick, we send forth oceans of compassion, comfort, and goodwill. May they be serene through all their troubles. May the infinite light of wisdom and compassion so shine within us that we all awaken into spiritual peace. We offer our devotion to all spiritual guardians who are present with us and ask that wherever this prayer reaches, it be perceived and answered. Amen.